Okay, so we do have a new BMW X2 for 2024, and this just hammers in my idea that car design is moving away from this emotional, sensual design that we're used to seeing from cars in the past 50 years into a more industrial and geometric looking style. And this is exactly what's going on in the BMW X2. So I'm going to compare this and show you exactly what has happened from the previous X2, which looked completely different from this type of package that we have right here, and then also show you the X1. This is supposed to be the coupe's more impractical version of the X1, but the X1 still looks so much better than the X2 for the 2024 model year. So let's have a look at this article first of all before we jump into Photoshop from Car and Driver, link down below in the description. So the second generation X2 sports an interesting new look and will be offered in 241 horsepower xDrive 28i and 312 horsepower M35i xDrive forms when it arrives in the US next spring. So the X2 enters its second generation with a new design that is quite different from its predecessor, and I clearly agree with that. Pricing has been updated here, so the X2 starts for the base model at $42,995 for the 28i and $52,395 for the sportier, more powerful M35i xDrive. No one will ever confuse this with the X1. So if you look at the X5 and the X6, for example, the X3 and the X4, the front end looks pretty much the same. It's just the sloping SUV coupe style that sets them apart. But here, it's a much bigger difference all over, both in the front and the side, in the rear, from the X1, which is the normal SUV version of this car. So this has a typical hunchback that signifies a vehicle positioned as SUV coupes. However, look at this shape here. We're going to talk more about this obviously in Photoshop because I have a lot to say about this design. But the drag coefficient is 0.25. So what that tells me is all these bean-shaped EVs that come out with cars looking like a blob or just a capsule of some sort without any sort of personality or identity, just to bring down the drag coefficient, that really doesn't matter because you can have a boxy shape like this as the X2 and still have a decent drag coefficient of 0.25. So stop doing those blob bean-shaped EVs and just do whatever the heck you want. The drag coefficient is going to work out. Just send it to the engineers to figure that out. So the US will get just 2 turbo 4s. You have the 28i with 241 horsepower from a 2-liter 4, and then the more powerful M35i xDrive gets the same engine, but it's tuned to 312 horsepower. So that's obviously the one you would get, because I know, even though the way this looks is going to be a fantastic car to drive. I've driven so many SUVs recently, and I think even though you have an SUV that sits higher up than a sedan, for example, or a coupe, BMW just manages to bring in that driving dynamics in every single package of their car. So I'm sure this is going to be a fantastic car to drive. 0 to 60 takes 6.2 or 5.2 seconds depending on which one you choose. Top speed is 149 or 155 miles per hour. But you got to check the box for the summer tires, otherwise it's going to be limited to 130 miles per hour, and we don't want that. So it comes with standard all-wheel drive and a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. And in the interior, you now even have in-car video games from gaming platform Air Console. So we have TikTok in Mercedes and we have video games in BMWs. What a time to be alive. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let me show you what's going on with this BMW X2 and what I think about it. So we have BMW throwing out a bunch of different designs without any sort of red line throughout their entire lineup. Every single model looks completely different from the other, and I'm not sure when they're going to come to terms with a style that they're gonna go with moving forward and have the same type of style across the lineup. So up top we have the old X2, which in my opinion looks a whole lot better than the new X2, even though this wasn't a beauty queen by itself, because have a look at this area right here. What is going on with these graphic features. The top part, the headlight, has a very organic, fluid-looking, beautiful design to it, which has some automotive feel. And then you have a circular fog light down here that looks like something that came out from the 90s and has absolutely zero connection to the top part, the main headlight. But they didn't stop there. They said, what else can we add to confuse people about this design? So what they did is decided to add a triangular piece at the very bottom for the air intake. So we have a triangle, a circle, and an organic piece right in the same line with there are the key features in the front end of the previous X2. However, if we disregard the graphics and just have a look at the overall proportions, this feels way more like a fun hatchback than a, hideous SUV coupe. And I think that's what, for me at least, makes this a whole lot more beautiful than the current X2, the 2024 X2. So the thing about this, they did the same thing here in the M version that we have on the X5M and the X6M, meaning that we have this black piece creating this zigzag pattern in the front end. And then we have this piece as well. A very static, very geometric looking piece. And we'll have a look at the headlight design. We have a bit of a tiny little dip right here before he goes in to the side fenders and stretches all the way there. Again, super static design, all angles, sharp angles, boxy feel all over this car. And on top of that, looking at the grille design, which also has a very unique grille these days for BMWs, it's now connected with a big, I assume this is like a radar sensor or something like that, right in the middle of the grille, connecting the two grilles. I'm not sure who came up with that idea because it looks absolutely horrible. I do wish that they moved this piece and just maybe hid it a little bit better in some way and not have it be in the main graphics of what a BMW is. The kidneys, just put in a absolutely square radar sensor or some sort of sensor in the middle of the front end of the face of the BMW. It doesn't give BMW the respect. I don't feel like designers these days, they don't give BMW the respect of the history of what BMW is in their new cars. There's a huge disconnect here. So let's have a look at the side view of these two cars. Again, more of a hatchback design for the previous X2. This is definitely my favorite angle of the previous X2 because it looks like, a Golf package. A pretty clean design with this hatchback proportions. You have the A-pillar going almost into the center of the front axle like we want, and you also have some nice line flow with a nice shoulder line cutting in to the side of the car into the corner of the taillight right there. And we also have a very tight greenhouse creating this very sporty, cozy look with the BMW emblem right there, just like we had on the old M1 in the C-pillar or the D-pillar in this case, I'm not sure. You also have a nice line here at the bottom going in to the bumper. And again, pretty proper looking hatchback proportions. This does not look like an SUV today to me, even though a lot of car companies, they want to market every single car they put out as an SUV. That just doesn't make sense to me, even though it is clearly a hatchback. So looking at the new X2 down here, and it feels, this is the problem with coupe SUVs. Because you have all this volume in the front end. Specifically now the BMW is doing these very boxy designs. We have a clear box right here in the front end. This is box number 1, box number 2 sort of right here. And then they just remove all the volume that we need back here that is intact in the X1 to proportionally balance out the front end. Looking at this now, it looks like all the weight is hanging, pushing down the front end. The proportions looks like it's going to understeer as soon as you try to take a corner. That's what pretty much 90% of SUV coupes look like to me. And then we have a very similar shoulder line to what we have in the 4 Series, where we have a very subtle shoulder here, fades in the middle, but comes back in the lower section, right in the middle of the volume that is the door, this panel right here, this surface, the main side surface of the car. Right in the middle, we do have a shoulder line coming back, and then it kind of fades in this area and comes back up top over the rear shoulder. Personally, I would much rather have, like we have in the 3 Series, where we have a strong shoulder going from one point to the other across the shoulder line, and not have a broken collarbone like we have here, where it goes sort of like this in a zigzag shape and coming back in the lower section. And then we have a very static feel here at the bottom as well. So static feeling is the way to go these days. At least we have some line flow from this middle section of the shoulder line into the rear end. But these proportions, to me, 100%, I would go for the BMW X1 in this case. I don't understand how, personally, I don't get the thing with coupe SUVs. Yes, you sit higher, you have a coupe style, two complete different categories clashing into one car, which means it's not graded anything. It's just sort of vanilla in a lot of different categories. But one good thing about this car is that I do actually like this frozen blue color that we have. So looking at the rear end here, you can clearly see the huge difference between the two packages. It's a completely new package for the new X2. So we have this hatchback design up top with some very nice taillights on the previous X2, even though I do believe that this was a front wheel drive. I'm pretty sure this was a front wheel drive version. But look at these taillights, how dynamic they are. We have some thickness here going into a thinner piece, and then it becomes very thin at the very end here, looking beautiful, looking like a car design element, the taillight of the previous X2. Then we have this line in the middle and this line as well. The difference is, as I've said so many times before, between industrial design and car design is that car design, when you look at a car, you want it to give you a feeling, an emotion when you look at it. You can look at a iPhone or something, consumer electronics. You don't feel anything when you see it. You don't feel any emotions when you look at it. But really good car designs, they give you this vibe that the car has a personality, and that's what separates car design from consumer electronics. And that is the lines that are getting very blurry today, specifically with BMW's designs. And further down here, we do have, as you can see, a pretty nice looking diffuser with dual exhausts. Very nice design, the previous X2. Now coming into the 2024 model year, and something just it went totally wrong here with this design, because we have super static feeling all over this design. Look at this diffuser. It looks like it has some sort of disease down here with these big black pieces just sticking out and pushing out way too far into the bumper for no reason, and having these very sharp corners all around this car, and also these very static looking diffuser pieces, wings at the bottom. At least we do have quad tailpipes in this case. I'm glad that they didn't hit those, which they obviously do on the fully electric version of this car, which they get in Europe. And then what is going on here? Look at these taillights. Why is it just cut like this? And it looks like they're not connected. It looks like two completely different taillights just put together in this car. And this is kind of what makes me sad when I look at BMW's designs today and what they're doing. They're completely lost all this emotion that used to be a BMW. When you saw for example, an E39 M5, when you look at the car in the front end, you see that it has a personality with these angel eyes. You have the mouth at the bottom. It looks like a car that says to you when you walk up to it that it's gonna take you wherever you need to go. It doesn't matter if it's thunderstorms or blizzards or whatever. This car has the personality to take you wherever you need to go, and that vibe is completely lost with the new BMWs, unfortunately. It's just a consumer electronics piece to me, and more of a product design than car design, and that of course happens in the interior as well. I definitely prefer the old interiors. I've talked so much about why in previous videos, but the reason being I can repeat it here again is because we do have a nice housing for the gauge cluster. The gauges themselves are analog, which I starting to prefer more and more the more I see new car design interiors. And then we have a screen up here, which is totally fine. It's not too big. It's exactly the size that I would want in a car. I don't need any bigger than this. And of course, you have a bunch of buttons and tactile dials that you can feel your way when you're driving the car. You can feel your way to what it is you want to adjust, which in my opinion is a lot better. So in a lot of ways, we're moving backwards when it comes to both, not just exterior designs, but interior designs as well. As you can see, all the climate control settings are now integrated in the software, and we have this big BMW dash with two screens up top, just stuck on the dash like that. However, the steering wheel looks pretty nice. I do like the design of the steering wheel. It looks sporty and fat, exactly like we want in an M-spec BMW, with the center red line up top. And we have some vents down here, some vents in this area, and a wireless charger at the bottom, and that's pretty much it. As I said in the beginning, I hope BMW figures out what direction they want to take their cars, and I really hope they go back to this E39 M5 philosophy. I'm not saying to design old cars and just modernize the same shape. I'm saying the same personalities that those cars have. That's what I want to see from BMW moving forward.